Get started now. Recording in progress. So today, um, we're going to learn about the concept of Olam Haba, the world to come. And just like every other topic we studied throughout this course, right, throughout this semester, everything comes down to it's all a function of this thing we call the image of God. All right, so when Maimonides, he speaks about it in the Mishneh Torah, which we've been mostly studying up until now, but he also has an introduction in the Mishnah dedicated to the topic of Olam Haba. And he opens up saying, well, there's a lot of confusion in the nation. He says, when you ask anybody, at least in his days, if you ask anybody, what is the ultimate prize, the ultimate benefit, the ultimate reward for keeping the mitzvot and following the Torah? So you'll have some that'll say, well, it's all the blessings that God promised you in the Torah, that you'll have rain will come down in its time, and you'll have prosperity in the nation. And others will say it's that we'll have a strong kingdom and will be the biggest empire in the world. And others will say it's the times of the Mashiach, right? When the Mashiach comes, and that's a time of great wealth, and that will be a superpower, and that everyone will be in good health. And others will say, well, it's the resurrection of the dead in the end of days, right? So if you keep the Torah, then you're promised to be resurrected. But then he says, אבל הנקודה הזו המופלאה, but this special and elusive aspect, כלומר העולם הבא, right, the world to come, הרי מעט הוא שתמצא מי שעלה על דעתו בכלל. He says, very rarely will you find anybody even discussing this topic. It doesn't come to mind. Today, maybe it does a little bit more, thanks to this introduction of the Rambam. Oh, and some say, it's all of these things put together, right? Or somebody who dedicates any thought to the matter of this concept of Olam Haba. Or שנתבונן ביסוד הזה, or anybody who has tried to really study and reflect upon this fundamental concept in Judaism of Olam Haba. או ששאל על אילו השמות, על מה הם נאמרים, right? And there's different words. Olam Haba, it's also called Har Hashem, it's also called, has all sorts of different terms for it in the Tanakh, right? Tzror HaChaim, right? When David coins the term Tzror HaChaim, so what does that mean? What do any of these things mean? Nobody is really dedicating any thought to it. והאם זהו התכלית, או אחת מאלו השקפות הקודמות היא התכלית? And is this concept of Olam Haba, is this the ultimate reward? Is this the purpose, man's purpose in life? Or is it any of these previous concepts, such as Yemot HaMashiach, right, the days of the Messiah, or the resurrection of the dead? Is the resurrection of the dead our ultimate reward? Is that our purpose? To come back and live a second time? ויבדיל בין התכלית ובין הסיבה המביאה אל התכלית. Right? And a person needs to differentiate between the ultimate purpose, the meaning, and any of those things, the means to the end. right? What is our end goal? And what other things are just the means to that end? For instance, well, is it our end goal to be healthy and rich? Right? It's one of the promises of what's going to happen, the rewards of keeping the Torah. Or is maybe that wealth and health just a means to a higher purpose, such as Olam Haba? Right? So, what is the purpose and what is just there to help us get there? ולא תמצא כלל מי ששואל על דבר זה ומדבר בו. And you won't find anybody discussing this topic. Right? So the Rambam is telling us this is a fundamental concept in Judaism. This is the ultimate purpose of the Torah, is to bring us to this Olam Haba, whatever this Olam Haba is. And all the other promises of resurrection from the dead, of having a powerful empire, of being a superpower, regional superpower in the world, of having tremendous wealth and living in good health. All these things are just there to support this ultimate objective of getting Olam Haba. It says, "Hatova hasifuna l'sadikim ihaye ha'olam haba." Right? The ultimate reward, or we say the benefit, the goodness that God has that's stashed away for the tzaddikim, right? The people who follow the Torah and keep the mitzvot, is hayeh ha'olam haba, living, or that life in the world to come. Vehen ha'chayim she'en imahen mavet. And this life is a life that has no death associated with it. V'hatova she'en ima ra'ah. Right? And it's also the ultimate goodness, right? Benefit that has no downsides to it. For instance, I may have tremendous wealth that I inherited in my family. However, it came because someone in the family passed away. Right? So we have a halakha. It says a person needs to bless on the on the bad things, same way as he blesses on the good things. So if a person's father passes away and he was very rich and he left him a very big inheritance, he needs to say Baruch Dayan Ha'emet on the passing of his father, and he needs to say Shehayanu on the inheritance that he just received. So throughout our entire lives, there's a lot of good mixed in with bad. However, the Olam Haba is the ultimate goodness, right, that we can receive, the ultimate reward that has no downsides to it. V'hu shekatuv b'Torah, and this is what it says in the Torah, L'ma'an yitavlach v'ha'arachta yamim. It says in the Torah, for the sake that you will have good, right, so that I can benefit you, v'ha'arachta yamim, and you should have long days. And what do the Chachamim say about this? Mipi Hashemuah lamedu, right, the Chachamim learned, L'ma'an yitavlach le'olam shekulo tov. It says Lema'an yitavlach, right? So that you shall have greatness, good stuff coming to you in a world that is all good. That there is no downside, there is no bad mixed in. V'ha'arachta yamin, right? And you shall have long days, le'olam shekulo aroch, right? In a world that is very, very long, that it has no end to it. V'zehu ha'olam haba. And this is the world to come, right? The olam haba. So the Sachar HaSadiqim, the reward of the Sadiqim, הוא שיזכו לנועם זה ויהיו בטובה זו, is that they shall merit this noam, this radiance, right? Even this word radiance, what does that remind us of? Something that we've been repeating over and over throughout our previous lectures. What radiance is this? Any ideas? Anybody? Noam zeh. What is this? V'yu b'tova zu. And they should receive this tov, this goodness. What is this good radiance? Right? This is the shefa coming from God. This abundance of, let's call it knowledge, we've called it life, we've called it love. Right? All this that God is putting forth. Right? The sachar, the ultimate reward of the tzaddikim, is that they will live eternally in this radiance. Ufira'on hareshaim, right? And what is the wicked people? What is their punishment? Ushelo yizku l'chaim elu, is that they will be cut off from this life. Ela yikartu v'yamutu, they will be cut off and they will die. What does that mean? They will die. Everybody dies. So what's the difference between the Saddiqim and the Rishaim? Is that they will not merit this life in the world to come. V'chol mi she'eino zoche l'chaim elo. And anybody who does not merit this life in Olam Haba, hu hamet she'eino chuya le'olam, ela nichrat berish'o ve'oved k'behema. Right? This is the person, he is the dead that has no life in him at all. Right? When he passes away, it's like he dies off just like an animal. His soul no longer exists. And this is what the Torah says. When it says karet, the punishment of karet, it means he's being cut off from this eternal life. It says that soul will be utterly cut off. Right? And in the tradition we learned, hikaret ba'olam hazeh, tikaret ba'olam haba. Why does it say it twice? Hikaret, tikaret hanefesh ahi. Right? It says hikaret will be cut off from life in this world, and tikaret will be cut off as well from the life in the next, from the world to come, in the olam haba. כלומר, שאותה הנפש שפרשה מן הגוף בעולם הזה, אינה זוכה לחיי העולם הבא. Right? So this person, or this soul that departed from the body in this world, does not live on in the next world. אלא גם מן העולם הבא נכרתה. It was also cut off from the next world. So, what is this Olam Haba? It says, Ha'olam Haba en bo guf ugviyah. There's no physical matter in Olam Haba. You don't have a physical form. You don't have a body. Ela nefashot as-saddiqim bilevad. The only thing that exists in the Olam Haba is the nefesh of the Saddiq, of the righteous. What is the nefesh? We'll get into that soon. Belo guf, right? Without any physical form. Just as the angelic beings, right? The non-physical intellects, angelic beings, ho'in ve'en bo gviyot, en bo lo achila, ve'lo shetiya, ולא דבר מכל הדברים שגופות בני אדם צריכים להן בעולם הזה. Since you have no body, you have no physical form, then you don't have anything that's associated with the body's needs, bodily needs. There's no eating, there's no drinking, there's no resting and awakening, right? Nothing that's associated with your physical needs. ולא ירא דבר מן הדברים שמאורעים לגופות בעולם הזה, right? And nothing will be like you won't feel cold, you won't feel heat, right? Anything that affects physical beings, physical bodies in this world does not apply to the next world. כגון ישיבה ועמידה, like sitting and standing, ושינה ומיתה, right? And sleeping, slumber, and death, ועצב, ושחוק, right? And there's no sadness, and there's no happiness, right? As a physical happiness, we'll see what kind of happiness there is later. וכיוצא בהן. כך אמרו חכמים ראשונים. And this is how the Hachamim said it, and this is the statement that we're going to be analyzing now. It says, Ha'olam haba, right, in the world to come, en bolo achila velo shetiya velo tashmish. Right, there is no eating, there is no drinking, and there is no, how do you call it? There's no sex. Ela tzaddikim yoshevim, right, but the tzaddikim, they sit, ועטרותיהן בראשיהם, and they have their crowns on their head, ונהנין מזיו השכינה, right, and they are enjoying, right, this radiance of the Shekhinah. Tzaddikim yoshevin, right, the tzaddikim are sitting / resting with their crowns in their heads, enjoying this radiance of the Shekhinah. All right, so so we already see there's no physical form. Right, since there's no eating and drinking. And this that they say, Saddikim Yoshevin Derech Amiru. We said there is no sitting and standing. So what is this that the Hachamim say that the righteous are sitting in Olam Haba? He says it's a parable. What does that mean? Yoshevin. Lomar. It says, Nefashot hasadikim mitzuyin sham velo yega velo amal. Says that the souls, the nefesh of the sadikim, they exist there without any energy, without any strain on them. They don't have to work for it. וזה שאמרו עטרותיהן בראשיהן, and what does this mean that they have their crowns in their head? It says כלומר, meaning דעת שידעו שבגללה זכו לחיי העולם הבא מצויה עמהם. It says this knowledge, this intellect that they acquire throughout their life, this da'at, this knowledge of God that they acquire throughout their lives, that lives on with them. Right? Because of this da'at, שבגללה זכו לחיי העולם הבא, which is the reason or what brought them into Olam Haba, it exists with them, this knowledge of God. Vehi ha'atara shelahem. And this knowledge is the crown on a person's head. Ke'inyan she'amar Shlomo, as Shlomo says in the Song of Songs, ba'atara she'itera lo imo, right? With the crown that his mother crowned him with. You know, the entire Song of Songs is a parable. So what is this atara, this special crown that Shlomo HaMelech received? Well, he was the wisest of all. Varehu omer v'simchat onam al rosham. And it also says in Yeshayahu, it says, and this eternal joy, this eternal pleasure is resting on their heads. Ve'ena simcha guf kedei shetanuach al harosh. Right? And joy is not of something physical that can be rest on a person's head or rest on any other place. So what does it mean? Simchat onam al rosham, right? This eternal joy, pleasure is resting on their head, meaning resting over here isn't something physical. This atara that is on the head also isn't something physical. It's this pleasure, this nehenin miziva shekhinah that we saw before, this enjoying, this pleasure in the radiance of the Shekhinah coming from God. Kach atara she'amru hachamim kan hi had'ah. So too, when the hachamim speak about this crown sitting on the heads of the tzaddikim, it's talking about this knowledge of God that they have in their mind. Right? And who wants to remind us quickly what is this da'ah more specifically? It's not just an intellectual knowledge of God, but how do we measure if someone has da'ah or not? Any volunteers?
Is it proper behavior?
Exactly. That's the one measure. If a person acquired real knowledge of God, it's how he incorporates this knowledge in his life. And what kind of behavior does he have? His qualities, his personal qualities. So what is this enjoying of this radiance of the Shekhinah? שיודעים ומשיגים מאמיתת הקדוש ברוך הוא מה שאינן יודעים והן בגוף האפל השפל. Says, is now that they have departed from their physical form, they are no longer confined and restricted in their understanding and knowledge by our physical form. Remember, in one of our first classes, we said, what is this that Moshe Rabbeinu asked God? He says, Hare'eni na'et kevodecha. He says, show me your glory. And God said to him, Lo yira'ani ha'adam v'chai. He says, man cannot perceive me while alive. He says, because our physical form limits us. Our perception is limited by our sensory perception while we are constrained by our physical form. So now that we have departed from our physical form, we have separated from it, right? We reached as much knowledge, as much understanding of God as we could throughout our lives. Now, once we depart from our bodies, these barriers come down, and we're able to perceive on a much deeper level. כל נפש האמורה בעניין זה אינה הנשמה שהצליחה לגוף, אלא סורת הנפש. Right? All this mention of the nefesh that we set up until now, or in this, relating to this topic, is not the neshama. Remember, the neshama in Maimonides isn't what we call neshama today. It says the neshama is the life energy in a person's body. This life energy is like a person's breath, right? That's why it says neshama from the word neshima, breath. It says, and when a person's body dies, his neshama dies with it. However, this nefesh that we're talking about isn't this neshama. It's the surat nefesh, right? The essence of the nefesh. Which, remember what else we called it? This is the image of God. And what is this surat nefesh? שהיא הדעה שהשיגה מהבורא כפי כוחה, והשיגה הדעות הנפרדות ושאר המעשים. Right? So this nefesh is the knowledge, the intellect that a person acquired throughout his life, right, as best as he can, his knowledge of God, his knowledge of these abstract concepts, right? These, right, deot nifradot, things that are non-physical, abstract concepts such as justice, such as charity, such as the malachim, all these things that he was able to understand and incorporate in his life, right? This is his de'ah. This is man's image of God. והיא הסורה שביארנו עניינה בפרק רביעי מהלכות יסודי התורה. Right, and this is the nefesh that we spoke about back in the 4th chapter of Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, which was in maybe our 4th or 5th class. היא הנקראת נפש בעניין זה. And this is what we are referring to, nefesh. And we even had an entire class dedicated to the concept of Sinem Elohim. So this Sinem Elohim, which the Rambam also refers to as the De'ah and the Nefesh, and Rabbi Yehuda Hanevi in the book of the Kuzari, he always refers to it as Ha'inyan Ha'elahi, right? The godly thing, aspect of man. So this is what lives on in the world to come. חיים אלו, לפי שאין עמהן מוות, שאין המוות אלא ממאורעות הגוף, ואין שם גוף, נקראו סרור החיים. Says, so this life, since it has no death associated with it, because death is only associated with a physical life of a physical form, of a body, we call it of a living organism, which doesn't exist in the world to come, right? It was also referred to as tzror ha'chaim. It's like a tzror is like if you have like beads, right? And you put them together one after another, and you make like a whole chain of beads, right? That's called a tzror. This is because it has only life after life after life, meaning a continuum of life. So it's referred to as tzror ha'chaim by David HaMelech. It says, Vaytanefesh Adoni Surah B'Sror HaChaim. Actually, it was said to David HaMelech, right? It says David wanted to take revenge against someone who wronged him, and he was going to go, and the wife of that person said, spare him, right? Don't worry, he's going to meet his fate anyways, and your nefesh is going to live on in this tzror ha'chaim, live on in this eternal life. וזהו השכר הגדול שאין שכר למעלה ממנו. Says, and this is the greatest reward, that there is no greater reward after this. והטובה שאין אחריה טובה. Right, and there's no more reward, goodness, benefit that can come after this. This is the ultimate reward, ultimate benefit. Vehi sheit'avu kol hanevi'im. And this is what all of the prophets have always been their ambition to. This is what they always wanted. It's always what they dedicated their lives to. וכמה שמות נקראו לדרך משל, and it has, has a few different terms, code terms referring to this eternal life. Har Hashem, right, the mountain of God. Mekom Kodsho, right, his holy place. Derech HaKodesh, right, the ways of the Kodesh. Hasrot Hashem, called Haser is you have the palace court. So this is the court of God. Ve'ohel Hashem, the tent of God, Noam Hashem, the radiance of God, Hechal Hashem, Bet Hashem, the house of God, Sha'ar Hashem, the gate of God. וחכמים קראו לה דרך משל לטובה זו המזומנת לצדיקים סעודה. Says another term that the Chachamim refer to this eternal life. They called the Seudah, the feast. Right? When we say, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but we shall take part in the feast, Seudat Orosh Nivyatan, the feast of the skin of Leviathan. These are all code terms, right? This is what the Hachamim are talking about. In any place, it's also referred to as Olam Haba, the world to come. In Hanikama, she'en nekama gidula mimena, right? The highest level of punishment, but there is no punishment after that. is שתיכרת הנפש ולא תזכה לאותן חיים. That the nefesh will be cut off from this eternal life and will not live on. Shne'emar, as it says, and we read this before, תיכרת הנפש ההיא. עוונה הבא. Right? Its sin is within him, and this nefesh will be cut off. וזה האובדן הוא שקוראים אותו הנביאים דרך משל באר שחת ואבדון ותופתה ועלוקה. Right? And this death, which is an eternal death, that there is no life after it, also has a few code terms. It's referred to as be'er shahat, right? It's the endless pit. And Avadon is also like a deep, deep pit where nothing exists. And Tofet and Aluka, v'chol lashon kelaya v'hashchata korin lo. And any term that has to do with destruction of a person could be a code term for this eternal death. לפי שהיא הכליה שאין אחריה תקומה לעולם. Right? Because there is, this is the destruction that there's no coming back from. That's it. You're erased. וההפסד שאינו חוזר לעולם. Right? And it's a loss that can never be recovered. It says, שמית כאן בעיניך טובה זו. Right? Maybe this benefit maybe doesn't seem anything special. You say, well, I can't eat, I can't drink, there's no barbecues, there's no wine in Olam Haba. So what's the point? ותדמה שאין שכר המצוות והוויית האדם שלם בדרכי האמת, אלא להיות אוכל ושותה מאכלות טובות, ובועל סורות נאות, ולובש בגדי שש ורקמה, ושוכן באוהלי שן, ומשתמש בכסף וזהב, ודברים הדומים לאלו. You see now what the greatest benefit, the greatest aspiration man can have should be, to enjoy life, have great food, great drinks, right? Have dress nicely, dress properly, have a nice big house, have lots of gold and silver. כמו שמדמין אלו הערביים הטיפשים, האבנים השטופים בזימה, right? As our neighbors, our Arab neighbors, foolishly believe. אבל החכמים, however, the wise, ובעלי דעה, people with knowledge and wisdom, ידעו שכל הדברים האלו דברי הוואי והבל הם. Says all these things, this is what the entire book of Kohelet is talking about. It's classics. It says, what does he say? He says, Hevel Havanim Amar Kohelet, Hevel Havanim Akol Havin. Says, what is heaven? Heaven is something that disperses quickly. Right? You eat something good. It tastes good. You enjoy it. 5 minutes later, it's gone. He says, the Chachamim, they know that all of these great things that come to us in our lives, they don't last They're not everlasting. They don't last forever. Ve'en b'hem tochenet, right? There's no ultimate purpose to them. So you enjoy it, and that's great. But it comes to an end. ואינה טובה גדולה אצלנו בעולם הזה, אלא מפני שאנו בעלי גוף וגבייה. And the only reason why we find some sort of benefit in them, some sort of pleasure in them, is because we are in a physical form. We have a body. If we have no body, we have no need for these pleasures. וכל הדברים האלו צורכי הגופן, and these are all bodily needs. ואין הנפש מתאווה להן ומחמדתן. Right? But a person's nefesh, a person's intellect, has no benefit from these things. It's only our body that benefits from it. Right? And the only reason why a person has cravings for these things is because of his body. If you accustom yourself to eating a lot of sugar, your body will develop a craving for sugar. Even though intellectually you know it's bad for you, it says you now have this chemical dependency on all these things, that the only reason why you crave them is because your body craves them, and it doesn't really do anything good for you except for answering some sort of chemical need in your body. But if you don't have that, then you don't have these cravings. And satisfying these cravings are meaningless. כדי שימצא חפצו ויעמוד על בוריו, ובזמן שאין שם גוף, but when there is no physical form, נמצאו כל הדברים האלו בטלים. All these things are meaningless. It says, but this greatness, this טובה that we have, הטובה הגדולה, שתהיה בה הנפש בעולם הבא, right, this great pleasure that we receive in the עולם הבא, אין שום דרך בעולם הזה להשיגה בה ולדע אותה. There is no way to really experience this while we are still in this world. We can maybe resemble it to some things. For instance, a moment of pleasure that you had in your life, maybe when a child was born, right? You felt this great pleasure, but this isn't a physical pleasure. Or when you receive some sort of honor, right? If you go to a place and everyone has great, tremendous respect for you, and you feel this love coming from your friends, coming from your coworkers, right? It's a pleasure that can be resembled to eating a good chocolate or even eating a nice steak, right? It surpasses, it's on a whole other level. It says the pleasure that you will feel in Olam Haba is categorically different than anything you experienced here. Even when we're talking about these more spiritual pleasures that we do get to sometimes feel in this world, it's still categorically different from any kind of spiritual pleasure that we can receive once we depart from our physical form. Right? Because we only experience in this world physical pleasures. And so we have cravings for them. Right? But this pleasure in the Olam Haba is tremendous. And you can't compare it to the pleasures of this physical world only through some allegories. So that's why they say there's going to be a great seudah in Olam Haba. Right? You say everyone will have big houses. There are no houses in Olam Haba. But truthfully, שנערוך טובות הנפש בעולם הבא כמו טובות הגוף בעולם הזה, במאכל ומשתה, אינו כן. But really, when the Hachamim, sometimes they resemble, right, the benefits, the pleasures of the world to come with pleasures of Olam Hazeh, it's not really true because it's categorically different. It's something we can't even possibly experience in Olam Hazeh, in this world. אלא אותה הטובה גדולה עד אין חקר, right? It's an infinitely great benefit, pleasure that we will receive, ואין ערך ואין דמיון. And there's nothing you can compare it to. הוא שאמר דוד, מה רב טובך אשר ספנת ליראיך, פעלת לחוסים בך. Right? How great is this pleasure Asher safantan yireecha, which you have hidden away for those who fear you. Right? What is it hidden away? It means we can't actually experience it in this world. Pa'alta lahusim bach, right? You applied it to those who take refuge within you, meaning after they've passed away and they're living within you, right? Then this great pleasure is applied to them. And see how much David really was wanting this olam haba, this world to come. Right? If only I get to experience this pleasure of God, right? Be'eres hayim, in this land of life. Again, remember, he said there's many names for it, right? Eretz Haim, right? The land of life is this Olam Haba. כבר הודיעונו החכמים הראשונים שטובות העולם הבא אין כוח באדם להשיגה על בוריה. Right, the Hachamim, the early Hachamim, they have already explained to us that there is no way to compare, to understand this benefit, this pleasure coming in Olam Haba, ואין יודע גודלה ויופייה ועוצמה אלא הקדוש ברוך הוא לבדו. The only one who really knows this pleasure of Olam Haba is God himself. שכל הטובות שמתנבאים בהן הנביאים לישראל אינן אלא לדברים של גוף. Right? But all the pleasures that we see that the prophets promise us in the end of days, or all the blessings that we get in the Torah, right? They all talk about our physical needs. שנהנים בהן ישראל בימות המלך המשיח, בזמן שתחזור הממשלה לישראל. Right? The Nevi'im, they're not talking about Olam Haba, they're talking about the end of days. They're talking about what blessings we will get when we restore our sovereignty as a nation, when we reestablish a kingdom, when we become a regional superpower, when we become an empire that influences the entire world, when we have tremendous wealth and abundance of wealth. All these things that the Nevi'im were prophesizing about is all in this world. Because even the Nevi'im, they can't tell us about the pleasures of Olam Haba, because you have to experience it, and you can only experience it once you're there. אבל טובות חיי העולם הבא, right, the pleasures of the next world, אין לה ערך ודמיון, right, there is nothing to compare it to, ולא דימוע הנביאים. And so the Nevi'im didn't even try to resemble it to anything, because anything you resemble it to will just diminish from its pleasure, from its essence. They שלא יפחתו אותה בדמיון. They didn't want to ruin it with their imagination. They didn't want to tarnish it. הוא שישעיהו אומר, this is what Yeshayahu says, עין לא ראתה אלוהים זולתך, יעשר המחכה לו. Says, no eye has perceived, right, this godly goodness, pleasure. However, it waits for those who wait for it. Ya'aseh, he's going to apply it to those who wait for it. כלומר, הטובה שלא ראתה אותה in the Navi, right? No eye of any of the Nevi'im has actually perceived this עולם הבא, אלא עשה אותו האלוהים לאדם שמחכה לו, but God prepared it for those who wait for it. אמרו חכמים, כל הנביאים כולן לא ניבאו אלא לימות המשיח. Says all the Chachamim say all the prophets, all the prophecies, right? The ultimate prophecies were for the days of the Mashiach, when the Mashiach comes. אבל העולם הבא, however, the world to come, עין לא ראתה אלוהים זולתך. Right? But the world to come, nobody, no eye has perceived it. זולתך, except for you, God. זה שקראו אותה חכמים העולם הבא, this that the Hachamim refer to this as the world to come, לא מפני שאינו מסוי עתה. So it's not the world to come, right? It's not because it doesn't exist now and we have to wait for it to arrive. וזה העולם עובד, ואחר כך יבוא אותו העולם, right? We have to wait for this world to finish and to come to an end for the world to come to arrive. He says that's not why they called it עולם הבא. אין הדבר כן, אלא הוא מסוי ועומד. He says this world, right? Think about it. If there's no physical structure to the world, it's not a physical world, it's not limited in time or space. Where does it exist? Well, the question where doesn't apply to it. It exists. When does it exist? Same thing. It just exists. And we don't have to wait, right, for something to happen in this world for that world to come. It says this world exists always. I wouldn't say everywhere, everywhere/nowhere. It just exists. שנאמר, מה רב טובך שספנת ליראיך. It's hidden from us. How great is this goodness, right, that already exists? אשר ספנת, which you are hiding, ליראיך, for the purpose of those who fear you or follow you. ולא קראוהו עולם הבא, אלא מפני שאותן החיים באים לו לאדם אחר חיי העולם הזה. The only reason why they refer to it as the next world is relative to you. It's the life that comes after this current life. Right? Once you depart from this world, once you finish whatever it is you're doing in your life in this world, then you transition into this next world that is already there. Right? Right? For those who wait for it, it's also waiting for you. Right? This world which we exist in physical form and with a nefesh, also our nefesh, our soul / our intellect, our image of God, right? Which allows us to, deepen our understanding, our God consciousness. The more we bring this God consciousness into our lives, the more of this life we get. And when we depart from our bodies, from this physical world, then we transition into this eternal world. And this world is what exists for man always, is barishona, right? So in this world where we exist with a nefesh and our physical form, it's just where we start our journey. However, once we depart from this world, we will be in this eternal world, this olam haba. right? And we've already mentioned before, right? We're going to go back to when we studied in the Hot Teshuvah. We said this knowledge, right? It all comes back to this de'ah of God, this consciousness, this God consciousness, this understanding of God. The more we deepen it, the more of it we get. Right? It says, "Davar yadua barur she'en ahavat HaKadosh Baruch Hu niksheret belibo shel Adam." Right? We started this off with the mitzvah of loving God. And how do you love God? Is by deepening your understanding of God. עד שישגה בה תמיד כראוי ויעזוב כל שבעולם חוץ ממנה, right? You dedicate yourself to studying and reflecting and bringing God more and more into your life. כמו שציווה ואמר בכל לבביך ובכל נפשך, right? You should love God with all your heart and your entire nefesh. This is אלא בדעה שידעהו. This is the understanding, this intellect of God that you acquire, ועל פי הדעה היא אהבה. And in accordance to this understanding, this da'ah that you achieve, is this ahava, is this love. עם מעט, מעט, ועם הרבה, הרבה. Right? If it be little, it's just a little. And if you have more understanding, if you have a lot of understanding, and you have a lot of this da'ah, so this da'ah is this intellect, it is understanding, it is this love, it is life. It's all this abundance, this shefa coming forward from God. We said it's all one thing. It is life, it is love, and that is pleasure. And the more you bring that into your life, then the more life you have. So you're living life on a deeper level. And when you part from this world, when you part from your physical constraints, and physical pleasures are no longer a function, all that exists is the real intellectual / spiritual pleasure of this eternal life with God. And that is the Olam Haba. Any questions?
Can I say something?
Of course.
And just now you said physical pleasure. I learned something also. So when you fix your feed, your physical pleasure also can help you to your spiritual. For example, if you don't want to learn Torah, but you want to watching TV, and just let you go to watching TV. After you're watching enough TV, you get bored. You really want to learn Torah, and then you go to learn Torah.
Right. So what's drawing you to watch TV?
I think it's hara, right? The evil inclination. But before I learn also, sometimes we also need to feed our evil inclination.
Right. That's what it says. B'chol levavecha u'b'chol nafshecha. The Hachamim say b'shnei sarecha, with your two inclinations. And we're accustomed to calling it an evil inclination, but the evil inclination isn't that evil. Well, unless it explodes, right? The evil inclination is your animalistic needs, your cravings, your bodily cravings. And the bodily cravings are there for a reason, right? We need them. Another place we also see with Maimonides, he refers to the imagination as the evil inclination, person's imagination. However, when we were studying about prophecy, we saw that this imagination is a fundamental it's a fundamental ingredient in prophecy. You can't reach prophecy without perfecting your imagination. So it's because it's also part of the nefesh, right? It's not part of this nefesh that we were discussing today. Remember when we were discussing the broader understanding of nefesh as being the software or the operating system of the body, right? Because it doesn't just take care of your sensory perception; it also takes care of your you know, how the cells in your body absorb the energy from the food that you eat and divide and split, you know, the DNA and the RNA. All that is all part of the nefesh. It's a different nefesh than what we were discussing today. That nefesh dies away with the body, right? And this imagination and also all the cravings that we have is also part of this nefesh. And we need to be able to subject this nefesh, right, to our intellect. Have our intellect guide our cravings. Have our intellect guide our imagination. So I'm very scared. I have a phobia. Right? That is this a justified phobia? Is this a justified fear? Or if I act upon this fear, am I letting my imagination get the better of me? Right? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Rambam.
Excellent. Any more questions? Oh, so regarding that, you know, it's a good point. The Shemona Perakim, the 8 chapters of Maimonides, the 8 chapters is his introduction to Avot, Masechet Avot, right? It's 8 chapters where he discusses the nefesh. At the end of the first chapter, he says, Da shezot nefesh ha'achat, right? That this one nefesh, he said, even though it has different functions to it, it is one nefesh. Asher kadam sipur kochotea v'halakea, which we have already discussed its different functions, right? Its sensory perception, the imagination, the cravings. Hi kahomer ve'asechel la surah, right? This is like, it's like clay, or it's like some sort of raw material. Ve'asechel la surah, and the intellect, the person's mind, is what gives it its meaning, its essence. וכשלא הגיע לסורה, יהיה כאילו מציאות ההכנה שבה לקבל הסורה ההיא לבטלה. Says, however, if you don't use this nefesh to achieve a knowledge of God, right, the essence, we said surat nefesh, the image of God, the intellect, the God understanding, God consciousness. Well, if you didn't use your nefesh as the tool to achieve that, it's as if this whole nefesh existed for nothing. The V'keinu mitziut heaven. And we said heaven is something that disperses. It disappears. V'hu omro gam beno da'at nefesh lo tov. This is what it says in Mishleh. Shlomo HaMelech says, and a nefesh, basically a nefesh without no God, it's no good, meaning has no eternal life. Right, the existence of the nefesh, it didn't acquire this essential part of the nefesh, this knowledge of God. Right, it remains a nefesh without any understanding. Lotov, right? This isn't good. This isn't good means it's not going to live forever. It's heaven. it dissipates. אבל הדברים על הסורה והחומר והשכלית והדעות, כמו כמה הם ואיך יגיעו, אין זה מקומו. Alright, this is not the place to really get into all the definition of the nefesh and the surah, things that we have already discussed in previous lessons. By the way, the story of Cain in heaven, right? Cain and Abel in English, those names are meaningless in English. In Hebrew, right? What Cain means? Kanani Yishet Elohim. God, he was the command acquired by God with the help of God. Heaven, what does heaven mean? Heaven means, well, heaven literally means like when you go out on a cold night and you go ha like that, and you have a breath and you can see it, but it dissipates very quickly. That is heaven. His name is heaven because he was murdered and died and didn't live a long life. However, there's another term that repeats itself throughout that whole passage. It says, Cain and Hevel, they each brought a sacrifice to God. God accepted the sacrifice of Hevel, but he didn't accept the sacrifice of Cain, right? So it says, Vel Cain, vel Hevel, vel minchato sha'a, vel Cain, vel minchato lo sha'a. It says when God, the term used for God accepting Hevel's offering is sha'a. What is sha'a? Anyone know the word sha'a? What does that mean?
Minute.
Hour, minute. It means hour. But again, it's using a temporal term. Hevel is something that dissipates quickly. Sha'a is already longer. It says the only way to achieve an eternal life is by proper worship of God. Because our lives here are like Hevel's life. It's going to end. Everyone's life is going to end here in this world. But if you bring a proper offering to God, it says God accepts this offering. It says he prolonged. It's like he prolonged his life. He prolonged his life in the eternal life. Understood? All right, any more questions? All right, so no more questions I see. I guess we'll meet up again next week. Bezrat Hashem. God willing.
תודה רבה, לילה טוב.
Okay, Laila Tov. Good night, everybody.
תודה רבה. Good night.
Simcha, pleasure.
Toda.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
תודה רבה.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Good night.
Laila Tov.
Thank you, Sami. I recorded.
בבקשה, pleasure.
Where's my recording?
Was that?
I recorded. I will just stop the recording. I don't.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, good. See you.
Laila Tov.
Thank you so much, ladies. See you next. See you on Thursday.
Thank you.